Sometimes life doesn't just knock you down, it takes everything you've worked for and leaves you with nothing but memories. That's exactly what happened to Mateo Cruz, a 47-year-old single father who lost his job, his apartment, and nearly his hope. With nowhere else to turn, he and his daughter Luna drove back to his late grandmother's abandoned house in rural New Mexico. The place was falling apart, cracked walls, a leaking roof, rooms filled with years of dust and junk. Everyone said it was hopeless, but Mateo saw something different. He started cleaning it out, one room at a time, and what he found inside changed everything, not just for him, but for his entire town. What could an old dirt house possibly become? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The afternoon sun hung low over the desert hills when Mateo Cruz's pickup truck finally turned onto the dirt road leading to his grandmother's house. Dust billowed behind them like a farewell to everything they were leaving behind. Luna sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, staring out the window with that same hollow expression she'd worn for the past 3 weeks. Mateo's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as the house came into view. He hadn't been here in nearly 5 years, not since Abuela Rosa's funeral. The house looked worse than he remembered. The adobe walls, once a warm terracotta, had faded to a dusty brown. Cracks spiderwebbed across the surface like veins. The portal, the covered porch that wrapped around the front, sagged on one side, its wooden posts leaning at angles that defied gravity. "Dad," Luna said quietly, "we can't live here." Mateo turned off the engine. The town of Tierra Roja sat 2 miles down the road, a collection of modest homes, a small market, a hardware store, and not much else. Out here, they were alone with the desert, the mountains in the distance, and this crumbling structure that held more memories than he'd allowed himself to revisit in years. "I know it looks bad," Mateo said, trying to keep his voice steady. "But it's ours. It's all we have right now." The front door protested when he pushed it open, hinges screaming from years of disuse. Inside was worse than outside. The main room was dim and stifling. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light that pierced through gaps in the curtained windows. Furniture sat where it had been left, covered in sheets that had turned grey. Mouse droppings littered the floor, but underneath all of it he could still see her. He could see Abuela Rosa standing at the kitchen counter, her weathered hands rolling out tortillas. He could hear her laugh, that warm sound that had made everything feel safe when he was a boy. "This is where I grew up," Mateo said softly. "When my mom couldn't take care of me, Abuela Rosa brought me here. I was 7 years old. She raised me in this house." "I didn't know that," Luna said. They spent the rest of the afternoon exploring, taking inventory of the damage. In the kitchen, they found the old gas stove still intact. Cabinets held dishes wrapped in newspaper from 2019. The refrigerator had been unplugged and cleaned out, but it was ancient and might not work anymore. In the bedroom that used to be his, Mateo found a small wooden cross still hanging above the doorframe. His grandfather had carved it by hand. He reached up and touched it gently, the wood smooth under his fingertips. Luna appeared in the doorway carrying a wooden box. "I found this in the kitchen pantry." Mateo recognized it immediately, his grandmother's recipe box. He took it from Luna's hands with reverence, opening the hinged lid. Inside were dozens of index cards, each one covered in Abuela Rosa's careful handwriting. Recipes for pozole, tamales, calabacitas, bizcochitos, all the foods of his childhood. He pulled out one card at random. "Green chili stew," it read at the top. Below, in his grandmother's voice preserved in ink, "This is what we make when times are hard and bellies are empty. It stretches far and fills deep. Always add extra love." Luna leaned over his shoulder, reading the card. She wrote little notes on all of them. Mateo flipped through more cards. Each one had similar additions, little pieces of wisdom, reminders, expressions of love baked into the instructions. "She wanted to make sure we remembered," he said quietly. "Not just how to cook, but why we cook, why we gather, why we share." As evening approached, they carried in what they could from the truck, sleeping bags, a cooler with their remaining food, a battery-powered lantern. The electricity was indeed dead, and when Matteo tried the faucets, only a groan came from the pipes. They sat on the front portal as the sun set, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple. An old man appeared, walking slowly up the dirt road with a cane. He stopped at the edge of the property, squinting toward them. "Matteo?" the old man called. "That you, boy?" Matteo stood, recognition flooding through him. "Domingo?" The old man broke into a wide smile, moving faster now despite the cane. "I'll be damned. Heard someone was here. You're Rosa's boy." They embraced, and Matteo felt something loosen in his chest. Domingo had been his grandmother's neighbor for as long as Matteo could remember. He had to be in his 80s now, but his grip was still strong. "This is my daughter, Luna," Matteo said. Domingo studied her with kind eyes. "You have your great-grandmother's face. Same strong bones. Rosa would have loved seeing you grown. You remember her?" Luna asked. "Remember her? Half this town owes their life to that woman." Domingo looked at the house, shaking his head. "Place has been empty too long. Started dying the day she did." "You come back to stay?" "Going to try," Matteo said. "Going to fix it up." Domingo was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded slowly. "It'll take some doing. But if you've got Rosa's blood, maybe you've got her stubbornness too." He patted Matteo's shoulder. "Welcome home, son." After Domingo left, promising to return tomorrow with his wife Pilar, Matteo and Luna unrolled their sleeping bags in the main room. The lantern cast long shadows on the walls. "Dad?" Luna's voice was small in the darkness. "Yeah? Do you really think we can do this?" Matteo thought about the recipe box, about the wooden cross, about Domingo's weathered face breaking into that smile. He thought about his grandmother standing in this very room, feeding strangers and family alike without distinction. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I know we have to try. This house, it saved me once. Maybe it can save us again." Outside, coyotes called to each other across the desert. The sound was lonely and wild, and somehow comforting, a reminder that life persisted, even in the hardest places. Matteo woke to sunlight, streaming through the gaps in the curtains, and his back aching from sleeping on the hard floor. Luna was already awake, sitting cross-legged by the window with her phone, probably checking for any signal. "Morning," he said, pushing himself up with a groan. She glanced at him. "There's no coffee." "No way to make coffee. We'll go into town. Get supplies." He stood, stretching the stiffness from his muscles. "But first, let's see what we're really working with here." They spent the morning going through the house more systematically. Matteo made notes in a small notebook. What needed immediate attention, what could wait, what might be beyond his ability to fix. The list grew longer with each room. In the small bedroom off the kitchen, Luna pulled open a closet that had been hidden behind a fallen shelf. "Dad, there's something in here." Beneath a pile of old blankets and moth-eaten coats, there was a leather-bound book. Luna reached in and pulled it out carefully, dust cascading off its cover. It was a journal, the leather worn soft with age. On the first page, in handwriting Matteo would have recognized anywhere, were the words, "Rosa Maria Herrera. My thoughts and days, 1970. "Is this hers?" Luna asked, reverence in her voice. Matteo nodded, unable to speak for a moment. He took the journal gently, opening it to a random page. The entries were dated, some long and detailed, others just a few lines. "Read one," Luna said, sitting down on the dusty floor. Matteo found a page from 1975 and read aloud, "July 15th, the well ran dry today. Tried not to cry in front of the children. Antonio says we may have to leave, find work in the city. But this house, this is all we have. This is where we planted our roots. How do you leave the only place that knows your name? Tonight I prayed for rain. Tomorrow I will figure out how to dig deeper." Luna looked up at him. "Did they leave?" "No," Matteo said quietly. "They stayed. I remember Abuela Rosa telling me they hauled water from town for almost a year before my grandfather and some neighbors dug a new well. She said you never abandon home just because things get hard." He flipped through more pages, decades of his grandmother's life recorded in fading ink. There were entries about births and deaths, celebrations and struggles, ordinary days made extraordinary by her attention to them. Then Luna pointed to an entry from 1982. "Look at this one." Matteo read it silently first, then aloud. "The bank sent papers today. 3 months behind on taxes. They could take the house. I can't sleep. Can't eat. This house has held 3 generations. How do I tell the children we might lose it? But I won't. I'll work every hour God gives me. I'll sell everything we don't need. This house saved us. I will save it." "Did she?" Luna asked. "Save it?" "She must have," Matteo said, looking around the room. "We're standing in it." The parallel wasn't lost on either of them. Matteo felt something shift inside him, a recognition that this moment, this struggle, wasn't new. His grandmother had faced losing this house and fought to keep it. She'd won. Maybe that meant something. Maybe that meant it was possible. "We should go to town," he said, standing. "Get some basic supplies. See if anyone needs work done." Tierra Roja hadn't changed much since Matteo's childhood. They stopped first at the hardware store. Inside, it smelled of sawdust and machine oil. An older man stood behind the counter reading a newspaper. "Help you?" he asked. "Need some basic supplies," Matteo said. "Cleaning materials, some tools if you rent them. I'm staying out at the Herrera place, Rosa Herrera's old house." The man's eyebrows rose slightly. "That place is still standing?" "Barely," Matteo admitted. "I'm her grandson, Mateo Cruz. This is my daughter Luna." "Berto Ruiz," the man said, but didn't offer his hand. "You planning to fix that place up?" "That's the idea." Berto made a sound that might have been skepticism. "That house has been empty near 6 years. Seen a lot of people talk about fixing things. Talk is easy." Matteo kept his voice level. "I'm not much for talking, more for doing. You know anyone around here needs work? Ranch work, repairs, whatever's available." "Might," Berto said slowly. "Tito Vargas runs cattle out past the old mission. Usually needs hands this time of year." "Appreciate it." Matteo started gathering what they could afford: a broom, cleaning rags, a couple of buckets, some basic tools. At the counter, Berto rang up their purchases without small talk. As Matteo counted out cash, the older man said, "Rosa was a good woman. Helped a lot of people." "Yes, she was. Shame to see her place falling down." Berto handed over the change. "But it'll take more than good intentions to save it." They found Tito Vargas mending a fence line on a sprawling property north of town. When Matteo explained who he was and asked about work, Tito studied him for a long moment. "Rosa's grandson," Tito finally said. "I remember you, skinny kid, always following her around. That was me. You know fence work? Cattle? Grew up doing it. Been a while, but it comes back." Tito nodded slowly. "Could use someone a few days a week. Pay's not great, but it's steady. You show up when you say you will, we'll get along fine. I'll be here tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock. On the drive back, Matteo felt the first small spark of hope. Work meant money. Money meant supplies. Supplies meant progress, one step at a time. At the house, they began clearing out the main room. Years of accumulated debris, broken furniture, old newspapers, things that had been left behind and forgotten. They hauled it all outside, creating a growing pile in the yard. That night, they read from the journal by flashlight. Matteo found one from 1987 that made him pause. "Listen to this," he said. "August 3rd. Today, Matteo asked why we stay when things are so hard. How do I explain to a boy that leaving is easy? That staying, fighting, holding on, that's where strength lives. I told him someday this house would be his. Someday he'd understand what it means to have a place that knows your name." Luna looked at him in the darkness. She knew. Somehow she knew you'd need it. Matteo closed the journal, holding it against his chest. Tomorrow he'd start work with Tito. Tomorrow they'd take another step. His grandmother had saved this house once. Now it was his turn. The first week settled into a rhythm that was equal parts exhausting and oddly comforting. Matteo woke before dawn each morning, drove to Tito's ranch, and spent the day mending fences, moving cattle, doing the hard physical work that left his muscles screaming and his hands blistered. But Tito paid cash at the end of each day, and that cash meant supplies, meant progress, meant possibility. Luna stayed at the house, tackling the cleaning room by room. At first, she'd been hesitant, maybe still hoping this was temporary. But gradually, Matteo noticed the change. She started making decisions without asking, which furniture to keep, which to haul away, how to organize the kitchen. On the 5th day, Matteo returned from work to find Luna standing on a ladder in what used to be his grandmother's bedroom, carefully removing something from above the doorframe. She climbed down, holding a wooden cross, its surface dark with age. "I found 3 more," she said, showing him her discovery. "One over each bedroom door, and this one." Matteo took it from her hands, running his thumb over the carved surface. The work was simple but skillful. His grandfather had made these with his own hands, had carved each one during the long winter evenings when outdoor work was impossible. "Your great-great-grandfather made these," Matteo told Luna. "I never met him. He died before I was born. But Abuela Rosa said he could make anything with his hands. Built most of this house himself, piece by piece." Luna examined the cross more closely. "Should we put them back up?" "Not yet. Let's clean them first, treat the wood. When we're ready, we'll hang them again." "Done right." He set the cross carefully on the makeshift table they'd created from salvaged boards. "These go back up when the house is ready to be blessed again." The kitchen ceiling remained their biggest concern. Matteo had covered the hole with a tarp, but it was a temporary fix at best. The exposed beams showed more rot than he'd initially thought. That evening, as they sat eating sandwiches on the portal, a section of the kitchen ceiling made an ominous cracking sound. They both froze, listening. Another crack, then a shower of dust and plaster chunks came down. Luna dropped her sandwich. "Dad!" Before she could finish, a whole beam gave way with a sound like a gunshot. More ceiling collapsed, this time a larger section than before. Through the kitchen doorway they could see daylight where there should have been roof. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," Luna said, her face pale. "What if we'd been in there? What if it happens at night while we're sleeping? We're not sleeping inside until we fix it." "Fix it with what, Dad?" "We can't afford new beams. We can't afford a contractor. This whole place is falling apart faster than we can patch it." "I know." Matteo felt the weight of it pressing down on him. "I know it seems impossible right now. It doesn't seem impossible." "It is impossible," Luna's voice cracked. "We should just go. Before someone gets hurt. Before we waste what little money we have on something that's already dead." The word stung. Dead. Was that what this house was? He looked at it, really looked at it. The sagging portal, the cracked walls, the gaping hole where the kitchen ceiling used to be. But then he thought of that handprint in the cement. He thought of the journal entries, his grandmother's determination in the face of worse odds. "Come with me," he said quietly. He led her to the back of the house, to that small cement walkway where her childhood handprint waited. But he kept going, around to the side where weeds grew tall and wild. He pushed through them until he found what he was looking for, another section of cement. This one older and more weathered. "Look," he said, pointing. In the old cement were multiple handprints layered over years, some tiny, some larger. Beneath them, scratched in uneven letters, "My children, my heart." 1965, Abuela Rosa made this, Matteo said, when she and my grandfather first finished building this house. Every one of her kids put their hand in the cement. 6 handprints. 6 children she raised in this house, mostly alone after my grandfather died. He knelt down, touching the prints gently. "You know what I see here? I see proof that people survived in this house. That they grew up, that they left their mark, that this place held them when the world was hard." Luna was quiet, staring at the handprints. "I see my mother's hand here," Matteo continued, pointing to one of the medium-sized prints. "She had a hard life, made a lot of mistakes, but she started here. This house gave her a foundation." He stood up facing Luna. "And I see your handprint out back. 3 generations marked in the bones of this place. That means something. That means this house isn't dead, it's just sleeping. It's waiting for us to wake it up. But the ceiling, we'll figure out the ceiling. Maybe not today, maybe not this week. But we will." He put his hand on her shoulder. "I'm not asking you to stop being scared. I'm scared too. But I am asking you to trust me. Trust that we can do this." Luna looked back at the house, at the damaged kitchen, at all the work that still needed doing. Finally she nodded slowly. Okay, but we sleep in the truck until that ceiling is fixed. And you have to promise me we'll be smart about this. No more going into rooms that look unstable. No risks, Matteo agreed. That night, lying in the truck bed under the stars, Luna asked, "Do you really think we can fix the ceiling?" "I think we start by asking for help. Tomorrow, I'll talk to Tito, see if he knows anyone with experience in this kind of work. Maybe someone who'd be willing to trade labor. Barter system. It's how things work out here. Always has been." The next morning, Matteo arrived at Tito's ranch to find the older man already working on a water trough that had sprung a leak. As they worked together, Matteo explained the situation with the ceiling. Tito listened without interrupting. When Matteo finished, Tito was quiet for a long moment. "That house," Tito finally said, "your grandmother kept it standing through sheer will sometimes. I remember a winter in '93, worst cold snap we'd had in decades. Rosa couldn't afford proper repairs, so she did what she could with what she had. Domingo and I helped some, but mostly it was her. I know a man, Javier Santos. Does construction, roofing, that kind of work. Good man, honest. Might be willing to help if you explain the situation." Tito pulled a piece of paper from his shirt pocket, wrote down a phone number. "Tell him I sent you. Tell him it's Rosa's house. That'll mean something." 3 weeks into the restoration, the house had begun to reveal its secrets in layers. Luna found the tin of photographs on a Saturday morning while exploring the cramped attic space. The ladder to access it was rickety, and Matteo had told her to stay out of there, but curiosity had won out. "Dad," she called down, "you need to see this." Matteo climbed up carefully, finding Luna sitting cross-legged in the dusty space with an old metal tin open in her lap. Photographs spilled out around her, black and white images, faded color prints from the 70s and 80s. "Look at all of these," Luna said, wonder in her voice. She held up a black and white photograph of a young woman standing in front of the house. The woman's hair was dark and pulled back, her expression proud. Behind her, the house looked pristine, the adobe walls smooth and unmarked, the portal straight and strong. "That's her," Matteo said softly, taking the photo. "That's Abuela Rosa. This must have been taken in the early 60s, right after they finished building." Luna sorted through more photos, laying them out on the dusty floor. "There are so many. Family gatherings, holidays, just regular days." She picked up a color photo from the 70s, showing a group of children playing in front of the house. "Are any of these you?" Matteo knelt beside her, examining the photos. Then he found one. A small boy, maybe 8 years old, sitting on the portal steps with a dog. "That's me," he said. "And that's Chico, best dog I ever had." The memory came flooding back, the way Chico would follow him everywhere, how the dog had slept at the foot of his bed every night. "Abuela Rosa let me bury him out back, under that big cottonwood. We had a whole ceremony." Luna picked up another photo, a teenager who could only be Matteo, standing with his arm around a young woman. "Who's this?" Matteo's throat tightened. "Your mother. That was taken the summer I met her. I was 17. I thought she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen." "She looks happy," Luna said quietly. "She was. We both were then." Matteo studied the photo, remembering that summer. "I brought her here to meet Abuela Rosa. Your mother was nervous, but my grandmother took one look at her and said, 'This one has a good heart.' They loved each other right away." Luna continued sorting, finding photos of holidays, Christmas gatherings with the house decorated, Easter dinners with tables crammed with people, birthday celebrations where children clustered around cakes. In every photo, the house stood as backdrop and witness. "There are so many people in these photos," Luna observed. "The house was always full." "It was," Matteo confirmed. "Abuela Rosa never turned anyone away. Relatives, neighbors, friends of friends, if you needed a meal or a place to stay, this house opened for you." They spent the rest of the morning going through every photograph, arranging them chronologically. One photo stopped Matteo cold. It showed Abuela Rosa standing in almost the exact same spot as that first picture, but this one was from much later, the 90s. She was older now, her hair silver, her face deeply lined. But she stood with the same proud posture. Behind her, the house showed its age too, the adobe slightly more weathered. But it stood solid, still sheltering, still home. "We should recreate this," Luna said suddenly. "When we're done, stand in the same spot, take a photo, add it to the timeline." "Yeah," Matteo said. "We should." That afternoon, Matteo called the number Tito had given him. Javier Santos answered with a voice that sounded like gravel and honey mixed together. When Matteo explained who he was and what he needed, there was a long pause. "Rosa Herrera," Javier said finally. "She fed my family for 6 months when I was out of work in '89, never asked for anything in return." Another pause. "I'll come look at it tomorrow." Javier arrived the next afternoon in a truck that had seen better decades. He walked through the kitchen slowly, examining the damaged ceiling, the exposed beams, the extent of the rot. "It's bad," he said finally, "but not as bad as it could be. Main support beams are solid. It's the cross beams that are rotted out. We can sister new beams alongside the old ones, reinforce what's there rather than replacing everything." "What would something like that cost?" Matteo asked. Javier looked at him steadily. "For anyone else? Couple thousand at least." "For Rosa's grandson?" He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "You help me with a job I got coming up next month, re-roofing a barn. Hard work, long days. You do that, and I'll help you fix this ceiling. You buy the materials, I provide the labor and expertise." Matteo felt something loosen in his chest. "More than fair. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Wait till we're done." But Javier smiled when he said it. "I'll make a list of materials you need." After Javier left, Matteo found Luna organizing salvaged items on makeshift shelves. "We have a plan for the ceiling," he told her. Her face brightened. "Really?" He explained the arrangement with Javier. Luna listened, and when he finished, she smiled, really smiled for the first time since they'd arrived. "So we can actually fix it," she said. "We can actually fix it." That night, they celebrated with a dinner made from Abuela Rosa's recipes, simple beans and rice, but prepared with care from the instructions in the recipe box. As they ate on the portal, watching the sunset, Domingo appeared again, this time with his wife Pilar. Pilar was a small woman with bright eyes and a warmth that reminded Matteo of his grandmother. She carried a covered dish that turned out to be fresh tortillas. "For Rosa's grandson," she said simply, handing them over. "Welcome home." As they shared the tortillas, still warm and fragrant, Matteo felt something shift inside him. They weren't alone in this. The community was watching, waiting to see if they'd prove themselves worthy of the help being offered. And slowly, one day at a time, they were doing exactly that. 5 weeks in, the transformation was undeniable. Matteo would catch himself standing in the yard sometimes, just staring at the house, amazed at what was emerging from beneath all those years of neglect. The windows were clean now, letting light flood into rooms that had been dim and oppressive. The main room had been plastered and painted a warm cream color that Luna had chosen. The floor, once hidden under debris and grime, had been scrubbed until the old wood gleamed. Luna found the blanket on a Tuesday afternoon. She'd been going through an old trunk in Abuela Rosa's bedroom, one of the last areas they hadn't fully explored. Most of what she'd found so far had been moth-eaten clothes and yellowed linens. But at the bottom of the trunk, wrapped carefully in plastic sheeting, was a blanket that took her breath away. "Dad," she called. "Dad, come here." Matteo found her sitting on the bedroom floor, a woven blanket spread across her lap. The colors were still vibrant despite the decades. Deep reds and blues, golden yellows and rich browns, all worked into a geometric pattern that seemed both traditional and somehow unique. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, every thread perfectly placed, the pattern complex but harmonious. "She made this," Luna said, running her hands over the weaving. "Look, there's a tag sewn into the corner. Ardierera 1977. Matteo knelt beside her, touching the blanket reverently. The wool was soft, the weave tight and strong. "I remember this," he said slowly. "Or one like it." She used to weave blankets in the winter, when the days were short. She'd set up her loom in the corner of the main room, and she'd work on them for hours. Sometimes people would commission them, but mostly she made them to sell at the market in Santa Fe. "It's beautiful," Luna breathed. She was an artist, Matteo said. I don't think she thought of herself that way, but she was. Everything she made, whether it was food or blankets or just the way she arranged flowers in a jar, there was artistry in it. They carried the blanket to the main room and draped it over the back of the couch they'd salvaged and repaired. The effect was immediate and transformative. The blanket added warmth and color, made the space feel intentionally decorated rather than just functional. It was the first thing that was purely beautiful rather than merely necessary. That afternoon, Domingo and Pilar came by for one of their increasingly regular visits. Pilar saw the blanket immediately and stopped in her tracks. "Oh," she said softly, moving toward it. "Oh, I remember when Rosa made this one. She entered it in a competition at the state fair. Won second place. She touched it gently. She was so proud. But she needed money more than ribbons, so she sold it to a family from Albuquerque. I always wondered what happened to it." "Wait," Luna said. "If she sold it, how did it end up back here?" Pilar smiled, her eyes growing damp. "The family returned it years later. They'd kept it all that time, treasured it. But when the husband passed, the wife brought it back. Said it belonged here with Rosa, that it had a spirit that needed to be home." She looked around the room at all the work that had been done. "She'd be so happy to see this. To see you both here, bringing life back. People have been generous," Matteo said. "More than I expected." "You're earning it," Domingo interjected. "Word spread about what you're doing here. How hard you work." Berto won't admit it, but he's been telling everyone who'll listen about Rosa's grandson fixing up the old place proper. "Speaking of which," Pilar said, "Soledad Ortiz asked me to tell you something. Her back fence is falling down. Wondered if you might be able to help repair it. She can't pay much, but she'd feed you lunch and dinner for as many days as it takes." Matteo nodded. "I'll stop by tomorrow, take a look." After they left, Luna stood looking at the blanket. "The house is starting to feel like a home," she said. "Not just a project." "Yeah," Matteo agreed. "It is." The work with Soledad led to other jobs. She told a friend who told another friend, and suddenly Matteo had a small but steady stream of repair work from people in town. Nothing big, fixing a leaking roof here, repairing a porch there, helping someone install a water heater. The pay was modest, often in trade rather than cash, but it was enough. More importantly, it was respect. People were trusting him with their homes, their problems, their needs. Luna started her remote job the following Monday. She'd set up a workspace in her room with a folding table and chair they'd bought at a thrift store in the next town over. The internet situation was indeed challenging. She ended up getting a mobile hotspot that worked most of the time, but she made it work. Every 2 weeks, a paycheck was deposited into her account. Small but steady income that meant they weren't quite so desperate with every unexpected expense. Matteo noticed how she'd stopped talking about leaving. She didn't say she was staying forever, but she'd stopped making plans to go. She talked about next month and by winter in ways that assumed she'd still be here. He didn't push, didn't ask, just let her come to terms with it in her own time. 6 weeks in, Javier arrived with his truck full of lumber and supplies. "Time to fix that ceiling," he announced. "You ready to work?" The ceiling repair took 4 long days. Matteo and Javier worked side by side, removing the damaged sections carefully, sistering new beams alongside the old ones that were still sound, installing new crossbeams where rot had claimed the original wood. It was technical work, requiring precision and patience. Javier taught as they went, explaining not just what to do, but why, passing on knowledge earned through decades of experience. Luna helped where she could, holding things steady, passing tools, cleaning up debris. On the 3rd day, she made lunch for all of them, sandwiches and fresh lemonade, and they sat on the portal eating together. It felt natural, easy, like they'd been doing this forever. "Your great-grandmother would have liked you," Javier told Luna between bites. "You've got her way of moving, purposeful. No wasted motion. I never met her," Luna said. "I wish I had." "She met you, though," Pilar said. "She and Domingo had stopped by to see the progress. When you were just a baby. Your parents brought you out here. Rosa held you and cried happy tears. Said you had strong hands even then, the way you'd grip her finger. Said you'd build something important someday. Luna looked at her hands, rough now from weeks of cleaning and carrying and fixing. "Maybe I am," she said quietly. When the ceiling was finally complete, solid and safe and properly supported, they all stood in the kitchen, looking up at it. New plaster would need to be applied and painted, but the dangerous work was done. The house was structurally sound again. "This place will outlast all of us now," Javier said with satisfaction. "Adobe and wood, properly maintained, can stand for centuries. You've given it another lifetime." That evening, after everyone had gone, Mateo and Luna worked together on plastering the interior walls. They'd saved the kitchen for last, wanting to see it fully restored. Luna mixed the plaster while Mateo applied it, smoothing it over cracks and damaged sections, filling in the scars left by time and water and neglect. "I've been thinking," Luna said as she handed him another batch, "about what Pilar said. About Abuela Rosa saying I'd build something important. Yeah? I think maybe this is it. Not just the house, but what it represents. Taking something broken and making it whole again. Honoring the past while creating something new." She paused, measuring her words. "I think maybe I needed this as much as you did. Maybe more." Mateo stopped plastering, looking at his daughter. "What do you mean?" "After Mom died, I was just going through motions. Working jobs I didn't care about. Living in that apartment that never felt like home, not really building toward anything. I was existing, not living." She met his eyes. "Coming here, it's been hard. Really hard. But it's also the first time in 3 years I felt like I'm actually doing something that matters." "It matters," Mateo said softly. "What we're doing here matters." They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the rhythm of the work almost meditative. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of amber and rose. Through the repaired kitchen window, they could see the hills darkening against the sky. "Do you think she knew?" Luna asked suddenly. "Abuela Rosa, do you think she knew the house would save us someday?" Mateo considered the question, thinking about the journal entries they'd read, the care his grandmother had put into preserving things, the way she'd wrapped that blanket so carefully, the photographs she'd saved, the recipes she'd written down with love notes in the margins. "I think she knew that's what houses do," he said finally. "If you build them right, if you fill them with love and purpose, they become more than just walls and roof. They become anchors. They become the place you return to when everything else falls apart." She built that into this house, into every adobe brick and wooden beam, not knowing exactly when or how it would be needed, but trusting that someday it would be. Luna nodded slowly, understanding. "We're not just fixing the house. We're honoring what she built into it." "Exactly." As darkness fell, they lit candles and kept working. The kitchen slowly transformed under their hands, walls becoming smooth and clean, ready for paint. Tomorrow they'd start on the color, a soft sage green that Luna had chosen, saying it reminded her of the desert after rain. The house was coming back to life, room by room, day by day. And with it, so were they. 7 weeks into the restoration, Luna made a discovery that would change everything they thought they knew about their family. She'd been organizing papers from an old filing cabinet in the bedroom, tax documents, receipts, letters that needed sorting. Most of it was mundane, the paper trail of an ordinary life. But at the back of the bottom drawer, she found a metal box sealed with tape that had yellowed and brittled with age. Inside were letters, dozens of them bundled with string, organized by year. The earliest dated back to 1968, the most recent to just a few months before Abuela Rosa's death. "Dad," Luna called, her voice strange. "You need to see these." Mateo came in from outside, where he'd been repairing the portal railing. Luna sat on the floor surrounded by opened envelopes, letters spread around her like fallen leaves. Her face was wet with tears. "What's wrong?" he asked, immediately concerned. "Nothing's wrong," she said, wiping her eyes. "It's just, these are letters. To Abuela Rosa, from everyone. From her children, from friends, from people she helped." She picked up one carefully. "This one is from your mother." Mateo's hand trembled slightly as he took the letter. His mother's handwriting, he hadn't seen it in so long. She died when he was 19, liver failure from years of drinking, another casualty of demons she'd never been able to outrun. He'd been angry at her for so long, angry at her choices, angry at how she'd left him to be raised by his grandmother. The letter was dated 1985. He read it silently first, then aloud for Luna. "Mama, I know I haven't been the daughter you deserved. I know I've caused you pain and worry. But I want you to know that when I think of home, I think of your kitchen. I think of the way you always had food on the table, no matter how little we had. I think of how you never made me feel small for my mistakes, even when I made so many. Mateo is lucky to have you. I know I should be there, should be the mother he needs, but I'm not strong like you. I'm broken in ways I don't know how to fix. Thank you for loving him enough for both of us. Thank you for giving him the home I couldn't. I'm sorry I'm not better. I wish I was. Love, Maria." Mateo's vision blurred. He'd spent so many years angry at his mother for leaving, for choosing alcohol over him, for dying young and leaving him with nothing but questions. But this letter, it showed a woman who knew her failings, who hurt from them, who loved him even if she couldn't show it the way he needed. "There are more," Luna said gently. "From her and from others." They spent the rest of the morning reading. Letters from Abuela Rosa's other children, checking in from wherever life had taken them. Letters from people thanking her for meals, for shelter, for wisdom offered during hard times. Letters from children she'd helped raise, grandchildren she'd guided, neighbors she'd supported through grief and loss and struggle. Then Luna handed him another bundle. "These are different," she said. "These are from someone named Carmen." Mateo looked at the name on the return address and felt his world tilt. Carmen Cruz, his wife, Luna's mother. Letters spanning from 1992 to 2019, the year she'd died. "I didn't know she wrote to Abuela Rosa," Luna said softly. "Neither did I," Mateo admitted. They read the letters together. The early ones were from when Mateo and Carmen were dating, when she was nervous about meeting his family, about being accepted. Abuela Rosa must have written back because Carmen's responses referenced advice given, encouragement offered. One letter from 1995, just after Luna was born, made them both cry. "Dear Rosa, thank you for coming to the hospital. Thank you for being there when I was scared and didn't know how to be a mother. You held Luna and you said, 'This child has your strength and Mateo's heart. She'll be fine because she has both of you.' I hope you're right. I hope I can be half the mother you've been to Mateo. He doesn't talk much about his childhood, but I see how he lights up when he mentions you. I see the way he parents Luna with the same patience you showed him. You gave him something precious. You showed him what love looks like in action, not just in words. I promise to do the same for our daughter. Thank you for raising the man I love. Thank you for welcoming me into your family. With gratitude and love, Carmen." Luna pressed the letter to her chest. "I wish I remembered her better. I was only 21 when she died. Sometimes I can't picture her face without looking at photos. She was a lot like you," Mateo said. "Practical, determined, kind without being soft. She would have loved seeing you here, seeing you do this." He gestured at the house, at everything they'd built together. They kept reading. There were letters from Carmen, documenting Luna's childhood, first steps, first words, school achievements. Letters asking for advice about parenting, about marriage, about keeping a family together when money was tight and stress was high. And in each one, references to Abuela Rosa's responses, her wisdom, her unwavering support from 2 hours away. The last letter was dated 3 months before Carmen's death. By then, she'd been sick for a year. Cancer that started in her breast and spread despite treatment. "Rosa, I'm scared. Not of dying exactly, but of leaving them. Luna is so young still, only starting to figure out who she is. And Mateo, he's strong, but he hurts deep. When his mother died, he closed off parts of himself. I'm afraid my dying will close off even more. Please, if something happens to me, remind him that closing off isn't protecting. Remind him that Luna needs him whole, not just present. Remind him that love isn't weakness, it's the only real strength any of us have. And tell Luna, when she's old enough to understand, that I loved being her mother, that even the hard days were worth it, that she made my life better just by being in it. I hope I don't need you to pass these messages along. I hope I survive this. But if I don't, please remember. Please tell them. Love always, Carmen. Mateo had to set the letter down, overwhelmed. I never knew she wrote this. Did Abuela Rosa tell you? Luna asked. After Mom died? No, she died just 6 months later. Maybe she didn't have time, or maybe she thought I wasn't ready to hear it. He picked up the letter again, reading his wife's words. She was right, though. I did close off. I've spent 3 years just going through motions, not really living, not letting you in, not dealing with the grief, just surviving. Luna moved closer, sitting beside him. And now I think maybe we're both finally dealing with it, together. He looked around the room, at the letters spread out around them, at this house that had held 3 generations of his family. All these letters, they're proof that Abuela Rosa was the center, the anchor. Everyone orbited around her because she made them feel safe, made them feel loved. Like the house, Luna said. The house was just the physical form of what she created. A place where people belonged. Exactly. They spent the afternoon organizing the letters, deciding which ones to frame and display alongside the photographs. Luna suggested creating a memory wall. Not just images, but words, the voices of family preserved in their own handwriting. That evening, as they worked on hanging the letters in the hallway, Luna said, I want to start my own letters. To write to someone, maybe to you or to future family. Document what we're doing here, what we're learning. Like a continuation of the journal, Mateo said. Sort of, but my own voice, my own perspective. She stepped back, examining the arrangement. So someday, when someone else needs this house, needs this history, they'll have it. They'll know the whole story. I think that's beautiful, Mateo said. Later, after dinner, Luna pulled out a new notebook she'd bought in town. On the first page, she wrote, My name is Luna Cruz. I'm 24 years old, and I'm learning what it means to come home. Not to a place I've been before, but to a place my family has been. To a house that holds their history and now holds mine too. My great-grandmother Rosa built this house with love and determination. My father is rebuilding it with the same tools. And I'm here, discovering that sometimes the thing you're running from is exactly where you need to be. This is my record of our journey. This is my letter to whoever comes next. She showed it to Mateo, and he felt pride swell in his chest. Perfect, he said. That night, they read from Abuela Rosa's journal one more time. Mateo had found an entry from 1989 that seemed particularly relevant. Today, I received letters from 3 of my children, each one facing struggles, each one finding their way. I cannot fix their problems for them, but I can remind them they are not alone. I can remind them that this house, this family, these connections we maintain through words and visits and love, these are the real inheritances. Not money or land or things, but the knowledge that someone sees you, knows you, loves you anyway. That's what I want to leave behind. Not a house, but a home. Not things, but belonging. Luna closed her notebook and set it beside the journal. We're doing it, she said softly. We're continuing what she started. We are, Mateo agreed. Outside, the desert night wrapped around them. Inside, the house held them safe. 4 generations now woven into its walls, each one adding their voice to the story, each one leaving something behind for whoever would come next. The restoration was more than halfway complete, but they were just beginning to understand what they were really building. 9 weeks into their work, the house looked almost unrecognizable from the crumbling structure they'd arrived at. The walls were patched and painted, the windows gleamed, the portal stood straight and strong. Mateo had even managed to restore much of Abuela Rosa's garden, clearing the weeds and preparing beds for spring planting. People driving past would slow down, pointing, talking about the transformation. The town had noticed. The town approved. Then the letter arrived. It came on a Tuesday morning, certified mail requiring Mateo's signature. Luna was at work in her room when she heard him swear, something he rarely did. Dad? She called, emerging to find him standing in the main room, a legal document in his hands, his face ashen. We have a problem, he said, his voice hollow. The letter was from the county tax assessor's office. Property tax delinquency notice. Years of unpaid taxes had accumulated. Apparently, Abuela Rosa had fallen behind in her final years, and no one had paid anything since her death. The total owed, with penalties and interest, was just over $18,000. They had 60 days to pay in full, or the property would be sold at public auction to cover the debt. Luna took the letter from his shaking hands, reading it twice to make sure she understood. $18,000, she whispered. We don't have $18,000. I know. Mateo sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. We've spent everything we had on materials and repairs. Even with both of us working, we couldn't save that much in 60 days. We couldn't save it in a year. Luna sat beside him, the letter still in her hands. All those weeks of work, all the progress they'd made, all the ways they'd grown and healed, it could all be taken away. Some stranger could buy the house at auction for pennies on the dollar, could tear down what they'd built, could erase everything Abuela Rosa had created. There has to be something we can do, Luna said, but her voice lacked conviction. They spent the rest of the day in a fog, going through motions without purpose. Mateo couldn't focus on the fence repair job he was supposed to start. Luna sat at her computer, supposedly working, but mostly staring at the screen without seeing it. That evening, Domingo and Pilar stopped by and immediately sensed something was wrong. When Mateo showed them the letter, Pilar gasped. Rosa never said anything about tax problems, she said. She probably didn't want anyone to worry, Domingo replied. That was her way, carrying burdens alone rather than asking for help. What can we do? Pilar asked. I don't know, Mateo admitted. I've been thinking about it all day. We could try to get a loan, but we have no credit, no real income stability. We could ask family, but there's no family left with that kind of money. We could... He stopped, unable to continue. We could lose everything, Luna finished quietly. After Domingo and Pilar left, promising to think of solutions, Luna started searching online for information about property tax foreclosures, payment plans, anything that might help. Hours passed as she dug through county websites and legal documents. Dad, she said suddenly, her voice strange. Come look at this. Mateo joined her at the computer. She'd pulled up the property deed, which was available in the county's online records. Look at the acreage, she said, pointing. The deed listed 15 acres. Mateo frowned. That can't be right. This property is maybe 2 acres, 3 at most. That's what I thought, Luna said. But look, she'd pulled up a satellite image of the property. See this? She traced a line with her finger. The property line doesn't stop at the garden. It goes all the way up that hillside. Mateo leaned closer, studying the image. She was right. The legal property line extended far beyond what he'd always thought of as their land, encompassing a significant hillside that rose behind the house. Abuela Rosa used to take me up there, Mateo said slowly, memory stirring. There was a flat area where she'd grow vegetables sometimes, said the elevation made them sweeter. And there was a spot with old foundation stones. She said her father had started building something there once, but never finished. That's all part of the property, Luna said. 13 acres we didn't even know we had. They looked at each other, the same thought occurring to both of them simultaneously. If the property was actually 15 acres, not 2, the value would be significantly higher. Higher value meant more options. Maybe they could get a loan against the full property, or sell a portion while keeping the house, or find some other solution. The next morning, Mateo called the county assessor's office. After being transferred 3 times, he finally reached someone who could help, a woman named Felicia Sandoval, who pulled up their property records. Yes, the deed shows 15 acres, she confirmed, but it looks like only 2 acres are officially registered and assessed. The rest? She paused, typing. It looks like there's a notation here from 1965, incomplete survey. The additional acreage was never properly registered with the county. What does that mean? Mateo asked. It means legally you only own the 2 acres that are registered, even though the deed suggests more. To claim the full 15 acres, you'd need to provide proof of continuous family use and complete the registration process. How long would that take? Normally, several months, sometimes a year. But given your situation, she hesitated, Mr. Cruz, did you say Rosa Herrera was your grandmother? Yes. There was a long pause. She helped my mother years ago. My family was going through a hard time, and Rosa, she just showed up with food, with help, asking nothing in return. Another pause. I can expedite the process if you can provide the necessary documentation, proof of historical use, witness statements, surveys, or maps showing the property boundaries. If you can get me that within 2 weeks, I can have the registration processed within 30 days. That would still put us past the 60-day deadline for the taxes, Mateo said. Yes, but with the full property registered, the value increases substantially. You'd have options for financing that you don't have now. The tax office might even agree to a payment plan if they see you're working in good faith to resolve the situation. After hanging up, Mateo explained everything to Luna. She was already pulling out papers from their document collection, looking for anything that might help. We need to prove continuous use, she said. The journal, Abuela Rosa wrote about gardening on the hillside. And those letters, some of them mention it too. That's documentation, right? It's a start, Mateo said. We need more, though. Witness statements from people who remember her using that land. Maybe old photographs showing the property boundaries. They spent the afternoon going through everything they'd collected, journal entries, letters, photographs. Several photos showed the hillside in the background with visible gardens or structures. Multiple journal entries mentioned planting on the upper field or harvesting vegetables from the hillside plot. The letters yielded treasure too. Carmen had written in 1996 about helping Abuela Rosa carry water up to the hillside garden during a dry spell. One of Rosa's sons had written in 1983 about clearing brush on the back 40, which must have referred to the upper acreage. That evening, Domingo arrived with 3 other elderly residents of Tierra Roja. Pilar told us what you need, he said. We all remember Rosa working that land. We'll give statements, sign whatever needs signing. One by one, they shared memories. Domingo remembered helping Rosa's husband dig irrigation ditches up the hillside in the 1970s. A woman named Gabriela recalled picking apples from trees Rosa had planted on the upper property in the 1980s. A man named Ernesto described helping Rosa clear brush and repair old foundation stones in the 1990s, preparing the flat area for planting. There used to be survey markers up there, Ernesto said. Stone cairns marking the property corners. Your great-great-grandfather placed them when he first claimed the land. Some might still be there. The next morning, Mateo and Luna hiked up the hillside. It was steeper than it looked, the terrain rough and overgrown. But as they climbed, evidence of past use became clear. Terraced areas where gardens had been, the remains of an irrigation system, fruit trees gone wild but still bearing. Near the top, on a flat area that offered sweeping views of the valley, they found the foundation stones Mateo remembered from childhood. And beyond those, exactly as Ernesto had described, they found stone cairns marking property corners. This is ours, Luna said, breathless from the climb and the realization. All of this is ours. Mateo pulled out his phone and started taking photographs. The cairns, the terraces, the old irrigation ditches, the foundation stones. Evidence of continuous family use spanning generations. They also found something unexpected, a hand-drawn map tucked inside a metal box near one of the cairns. The map showed the full property boundaries, drawn in Abuela Rosa's unmistakable handwriting. Dated 1952, notes in the margins indicated planting locations, water sources, future building plans that had never materialized. This is exactly what we need, Luna said, carefully unfolding the brittle paper. Back at the house, they compiled everything. The map, the photographs, the journal entries, the letters, the witness statements Domingo and the others had written and signed. Mateo scanned it all and sent it to Felicia at the county office. She called back within hours. This is solid documentation, she said. I can work with this. Give me 2 weeks to process the registration. In the meantime, I'll contact the tax office and explain the situation. They should be willing to wait for the registration to complete before proceeding with foreclosure. Should be? Mateo asked. I can't make promises, but I'll do everything I can. After the call ended, Matteo and Luna sat on the portal, looking up at the hillside that was apparently theirs. The house they'd been saving was bigger than they'd known. The legacy they'd been protecting was deeper than they'd understood. Even if we save it, Luna said quietly, we still need to figure out how to pay $18,000. One problem at a time, Matteo replied. First we claim what's ours. Then we figure out how to keep it. But uncertainty gnawed at him. They'd come so far, worked so hard. The house was nearly restored. They'd found healing here, found purpose, found each other again. The thought of losing it all now, when they were so close, was almost unbearable. That night, neither of them slept much. The 60-day deadline ticked away in the darkness like a countdown timer. Everything they'd built, everything they'd become, hung in the balance. The 10th week began with a mixture of frantic activity and agonizing waiting. Felicia had submitted their documentation to the county registration office, but bureaucracy moved slowly even when expedited. Meanwhile, the tax deadline loomed, 43 days remaining, then 42, then 41. Matteo threw himself into finishing the house with renewed urgency. If they were going to lose it, at least they'd lose it complete. At least they'd have done everything they set out to do. He worked late into the evenings, sometimes by lamplight, painting trim, fixing minor issues, perfecting details that didn't strictly need perfecting. Luna handled the paperwork side, calling the county office daily for updates, researching financing options, calculating and recalculating numbers that never quite added up to $18,000. Her remote job continued, providing steady income, but steady wasn't enough. They needed a miracle. On day 37, Felicia called with news. The county has approved the full property registration. All 15 acres are now officially yours, properly assessed and recorded. Matteo felt relief flood through him. That's great. So now the property value is significantly higher, Felicia interrupted. I've spoken with the tax office. They're willing to extend your deadline by 30 days to give you time to explore financing options. That gives you 90 days total from the original notice. 90 days. Still not much time, but better than what they'd had. Thank you, Matteo said. For everything. There's one more thing, Felicia said. The increased property value means you might qualify for a small business loan if you can show a viable plan. The hillside land has potential. It's flat enough for building, accessible enough for development. If you could present a credible proposal for using that land to generate income, a local lender might work with you. After hanging up, Matteo found Luna in the garden and explained everything. A business plan, she said thoughtfully, using the hillside property. What kind of business? They spent the evening brainstorming. The hillside could support a workshop. Matteo's repair business was growing, and he needed proper workspace. Or they could lease portions to local farmers for planting, or develop it for small casitas to rent, providing steady income. Each option had merit and challenges. Domingo arrived the next morning with Berto, who'd apparently heard about their situation through the town grapevine. We've been talking, Berto said without preamble, about what you're doing here, about what Rosa would want. Okay, Matteo said cautiously. The town needs people like you, Berto continued. People who work hard, who honor the old ways while building something new. Your repair work, you're good at it. Honest, reliable, people trust you. He paused. What if you formalized it? Started a real business. Built a workshop on that hillside land. I've thought about it, Matteo admitted. But building a workshop, getting tools and equipment, getting licensed and insured, that all costs money we don't have. What if you had help? Domingo asked. What if the community invested in you? Matteo looked between them, not understanding. Here's what we're thinking, Berto said. You build the workshop, start a proper restoration and repair business. Not just for yourself, you train young people too. Pass on the skills. There's kids in this town with no prospects, no future. You could teach them traditional building methods, repair work, craftsmanship. Give them something. Like an apprenticeship program, Luna said, catching on. Exactly, Domingo confirmed. And in return for the community helping you get started. loaning materials, providing labor, supporting the business. You commit to serving the community. Fair prices, training local youth, being the kind of person Rosa was. Someone who builds others up. Matteo felt emotion well in his throat. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Berto replied. Then let's get to work. Over the next 2 weeks, the community mobilized in ways Matteo had never imagined. Berto provided building materials at cost, accepting payment plans that wouldn't strain Matteo's finances. Tito donated lumber from his property. Javier offered to oversee the workshop construction, teaching Matteo and Luna as they built. Soledad organized other women in town to help finish the interior of the house. They arrived one Saturday morning with cleaning supplies, paint and fabric, transforming the remaining rough spaces into warm, welcoming rooms. Children came with their parents, and the house filled with laughter and voices, just as it had in Abuela Rosa's time. Ernesto brought his grandson, a quiet 16-year-old named Felipe, who dropped out of school and was drifting without direction. The boy's good with his hands, Ernesto said. Just needs someone to show him he's worth something. Matteo put Felipe to work immediately, teaching him how to measure lumber, how to use tools properly, how to take pride in work well done. The kid was a natural, picking up skills quickly, asking thoughtful questions. By the end of the first day, Felipe was smiling, actually smiling, as he showed his grandfather a perfectly square corner he'd built. This is what we're building, Luna said to Matteo that evening, watching Felipe and his grandfather examine the day's work. Not just a workshop, a future. While the workshop took shape on the hillside, Luna worked with Felicia to develop a formal business plan. She researched licensing requirements, insurance costs, potential revenue streams. She created projections showing how a restoration business with a training component could sustain itself and grow. The numbers looked good, better than good. If they could just get past the initial hurdle, the business could work. They submitted the business plan to 3 local lenders, who rejected them immediately. Too risky, insufficient credit history, unproven business model. The third, a small community bank in the next town over, asked for a meeting. The bank manager was a woman in her 60s named Paulina Mendez. She reviewed their application silently, while Matteo and Luna sat across from her desk, trying not to show their desperation. Finally, Paulina looked up. Rosa Herrera was your grandmother? Yes, Matteo said. She loaned my father money once, Paulina said. This was 40 years ago. He was trying to start a small business, couldn't get a bank to look at him twice. Rosa gave him $500 from her own savings. Told him to pay it back when he could, no interest, no contract. Just trust. She smiled slightly. He paid her back within a year, used the success of that first business to build something bigger. He never forgot her kindness. Matteo waited, barely breathing. Your business plan is solid, Paulina continued. The community support is impressive. But more than that, I believe in what you're trying to do, building something meaningful, not just profitable, honoring the past while creating opportunities for the future. That matters. She opened a folder. I'm prepared to offer you a loan for $15,000, enough to cover the tax debt and provide working capital for the business. Terms are reasonable, 5 years, low interest rate. Payments don't start for 90 days to give you time to get established. Luna grabbed Matteo's hand under the desk, squeezing hard. There's one condition, Paulina added. You have to promise me something. When someone else needs help the way you needed it today, when someone else is trying to build something meaningful but can't get traditional financing, you remember this moment. You help them the way Rosa helped my father, the way the community helped you. You pass it forward, I promise, Matteo said, his voice rough with emotion. We both do. They signed the papers that afternoon. Walking out of the bank, loan documents in hand, Luna stopped on the sidewalk and just breathed. We did it, she said. We actually did it. We had help, Matteo replied. Lots of it. That's the point, though, isn't it? Luna looked back at the bank, then toward the mountains where their house waited. Abuela Rosa built something bigger than a house. She built a web of connection, of people helping people, of kindness that echoes forward through generations. We're not saving the house alone. We're being caught by that web she created. That evening, they gathered everyone who'd helped at the house for a meal. Mateo cooked from Abuela Rosa's recipes: pozole and fresh tortillas, calabacitas and beans, bizcochitos for dessert. The table they'd restored sat crowded with people, conversation flowing, children running through rooms that had been empty for so long. Domingo stood and raised his glass of water. "To Rosa," he said, "who taught us that home isn't a place, it's people choosing to care for each other." "To Rosa," everyone echoed. After dinner, as people lingered on the portal watching stars emerge, Berto pulled Mateo aside. "I judged you wrong at first," he said. "Thought you were another dreamer who'd quit when things got hard. I'm glad I was wrong. I almost was that person," Mateo admitted. "I almost quit a dozen times. But then I'd remember her, remember what she survived, what she built. And I'd think if she could do it, maybe I could too. That's legacy," Berto said. "Not leaving money or property, leaving an example of how to live." "She did that. Now you're doing it too." Later, after everyone had gone, Mateo and Luna sat on the portal in the darkness. The house glowed with warm light behind them. The workshop framework stood visible on the hillside, promise of what was coming. 90 days ago we had nothing," Luna said quietly. "Now we have this." "How did that happen?" "One day at a time," Mateo replied. "One person at a time. One act of kindness at a time." He looked at his daughter. "And we did it together." "Yeah," Luna said. "We did. Tomorrow they'd pay the tax debt. Tomorrow they'd continue building the workshop. Tomorrow they'd take the next step and the next. But tonight, they just sat in the darkness, listening to the desert night sounds, feeling the solid house at their backs. They'd saved it. They'd saved themselves. And now they'd use what they'd built to help save others. The morning of the open house arrived clear and bright. The October sky, that particular shade of blue that only existed in New Mexico. Mateo woke before dawn, nerves humming through his body. Today they'd show the community everything they'd accomplished. Today they'd prove the house was truly saved, truly restored, truly alive again. Luna was already in the kitchen, preparing food from Abuela Rosa's recipes. The kitchen table, the heart of the home, painstakingly refinished over several evenings, stood ready to receive dishes and guests. She'd set it with mismatched plates they'd collected from thrift stores, making a virtue of variety rather than trying to hide it. "You've been cooking since 5, Mateo observed. "Couldn't sleep," Luna admitted, stirring a pot of pozole. "What if no one comes?" "Everyone will come," Mateo assured her. "Trust me." By 9 o'clock they'd prepared enough food to feed 40 people. Tamales steamed in large pots. Fresh tortillas sat wrapped in warm towels. Calabacitas simmered with corn and green chile. Bizcochitos cooled on every available surface, filling the house with the scent of anise and cinnamon. The first guests arrived at 10, Domingo and Pilar, dressed in their Sunday best, despite it being Saturday. Pilar carried a bouquet of desert wildflowers. "For Rosa's table," she said, placing them in a jar Luna had set out. "She always had flowers even when times were hardest." More people came. Berto arrived with his wife and 3 grandchildren. Javier brought his extended family. Tito and several ranch hands stopped by between morning chores and afternoon work. Soledad came with a group of women who'd helped with the final cleaning, exclaiming over how beautiful everything looked. The house filled with voices, with laughter, with the sound of children playing in rooms where Mateo himself had played decades ago. People moved through each space, admiring the restored walls, the refinished floors, the careful preservation of original details alongside necessary improvements. In the main room, the photograph wall drew everyone's attention. Guests would stop, pointing out people they recognized, sharing stories about the faces frozen in time. The letter display in the hallway made some people cry, seeing Abuela Rosa's words, seeing the web of connection she'd maintained through written correspondence. Felipe arrived with his grandfather, bringing 3 other teenagers from town. The boys were quiet at first, uncertain in the adult gathering, but Mateo put them to work immediately, asking them to help serve food, to guide guests through the house, to explain the restoration work that had been done. The responsibility straightened their spines, brought purpose to their movements. This is what we're building, Matteo told them, gesturing toward the hillside where the workshop frame stood visible. A place where you'll learn real skills, where you'll build things that matter, where you'll become men who can take care of yourselves and others. Felipe looked at the workshop, then back at Matteo. You really mean it? You'll teach us? I really mean it, Matteo confirmed. Starting next week, first project, finishing that workshop. You'll learn by doing. By noon, the house was overflowing. Someone had brought a guitar and music started. Traditional songs that Matteo remembered from childhood, melodies his grandmother had hummed while cooking. People sang along, the sound filling the house with warmth. Felicia arrived with the county assessor and the bank manager, Paulina. They walked through systematically, examining the work with professional eyes. Matteo watched them nervously, trying to read their expressions. In the kitchen, the assessor ran his hand along the new beams in the ceiling. Quality work, he said. Better than some licensed contractors I've seen. Javier Santos oversaw it, Matteo explained. I just provided the labor. Don't sell yourself short, Javier interjected from nearby. You did most of the work yourself. I just made sure you didn't kill yourself doing it. Paulina examined the business plan materials Luna had displayed on a side table. Projected revenue, community partnerships, apprenticeship program details. This is exactly what I hope to see, she said. Not just a house restored, but a vision for sustainable impact. Felicia approached Matteo with papers in her hand. The tax payment has cleared. The property is officially current, all 15 acres properly registered and assessed. This house is yours, free and clear, except for the business loan. The relief that washed through Matteo was so intense, it made him dizzy. Luna appeared at his elbow, having heard. She gripped his arm, steadying him. We did it, she whispered. We did it, he agreed. The assessor cleared his throat, drawing attention. I've been doing this job for 20 years, he said to the gathering crowd. I've seen a lot of properties, a lot of restorations. Most people, when they fix up an old place, they strip out everything that made it unique. They modernize it until it could be anywhere, could be anything. But this, he gestured around the room, this is different. You've honored what was here while making it functional for now. You've preserved the soul of the place. Applause rippled through the crowd. Matteo felt his face heat, uncomfortable with the attention but grateful for the recognition. Berto raised his voice over the chatter. I want to say something. When this man first came into my store, I didn't think he'd last a week. Thought he'd take one look at this place, realize the work involved, and run back to the city. He paused, looking directly at Matteo. I was wrong. Dead wrong. What I've watched over these past months, it's not just construction. It's dedication. It's honoring family. It's showing up every day, even when you're exhausted, even when it seems impossible, even when every logical reason says to quit. That's what Rosa did. That's what makes this place special. Not the walls, but the people who refuse to let it fall. More applause. Stronger now. Luna moved closer to Matteo's side, and he put his arm around her shoulders. I couldn't have done this alone, Matteo said when the noise quieted. When we arrived here, we had nothing, less than nothing. We had debt and desperation, and a house that was more ruin than home. But this community, all of you caught us. You gave us materials and labor and knowledge. You gave us belief when we'd run out. You showed us what my grandmother always knew, that we're stronger together than we could ever be alone. He looked around the room, meeting eyes, acknowledging faces. This house was my grandmother's gift to us, but making it live again, that was your gift. Every person here contributed something. Every person here is part of this restoration. This isn't just my house or Luna's house. This is our house, the community's house, a place that will keep catching people when they fall, the way it caught us. Pilar was crying openly now, and she wasn't alone. Domingo wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. There's one more thing, Luna said, stepping forward. She held up a new book, leather-bound, similar to Abuela Rosa's journal, but fresh and unmarked. We're starting a guest book. Everyone who comes here, everyone who's part of this story, we want you to write something. Your memories of Abuela Rosa, your thoughts about the house, your hopes for the future. We're creating a living record of this place and the people who love it. She set the book on the kitchen table, pen beside it. People moved forward slowly, reverently. The first entry was from Domingo. "Rosa, you would be proud. Your grandson has your heart. Your house lives again." One by one, people wrote. Some entries were long, detailed memories spanning paragraphs. Others were brief, just a name and "I was here," or "thank you." Children drew pictures. Teenagers wrote awkwardly sincere messages about hope and futures and second chances. Felipe wrote, "Today I learned that broken things can be fixed. Houses and maybe people too. Thank you for showing me that." The afternoon stretched long and warm. Food was eaten, stories were told, connections were made and strengthened. In the yard, children played the same games Mateo had played at their age. On the portal, elders sat in chairs and talked about weather and family and the way things used to be and the way things were becoming. Mateo stood in the doorway between inside and outside, watching it all. This was what the house was meant for, this gathering, this warmth, this sense of belonging and community. They'd restored more than adobe and wood. They'd restored purpose. Luna found him there, leaned against his shoulder. "Look what we made," she said softly. "Look what we all made together," he corrected. The sun moved lower, painting the desert in amber and gold. Guests began to drift away, promising to return, making plans to help with the workshop construction, inviting Mateo and Luna to their own homes for future meals. The web of connection that Abuela Rosa had spun decades ago was strengthening, growing, reaching forward into new generations. As the last guests departed, as evening settled over the house, Mateo and Luna stood in the main room surrounded by the evidence of the day, the guest book filled with messages, the empty serving dishes that had held so much food, the slightly disheveled but deeply loved space that had held so many people. "We should clean," Luna said without conviction. "Tomorrow," Mateo replied. "Tonight, let's just sit with this." They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Abuela Rosa had fed her family and half the neighborhood, where letters had been written and recipes had been created and decisions had been made. They sat in silence, feeling the house settle around them, feeling the fullness of what they'd accomplished. The house was saved. The community was stronger. The future was possible. And tomorrow they'd begin building it. The peak of the open house had passed, but the house remained full of an energy that seemed to hum in the very walls. As twilight deepened into true darkness, a few guests lingered, those closest to the family, those most invested in the story. Paulina, the bank manager, pulled Mateo aside on the portal. "I want to make something official," she said, drawing papers from her bag. "The loan is approved and finalized. You made your first payment when you cleared the tax debt. The rest of the terms remain as discussed." She handed him a folder. "But I'm also including something else, a letter of recommendation for your business. You'll need it for licensing, for insurance, for future growth. Consider it my investment in what you're building here." Mateo's throat tightened. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," Paulina smiled. "But Rosa didn't have to help my father either. This is how it works. This is how we keep the good moving forward." Inside, Felicia was showing Luna how to access the county's small business resources online. "There are grants available for community development projects," she explained. "Your apprenticeship program could qualify. It won't be a lot of money, but every bit helps when you're starting out." Berto appeared with a business card. "My nephew runs an insurance agency in Santa Fe. Tell him I sent you. He'll get you proper coverage at rates you can afford." He paused, looking around the house. "You know, I fought with Rosa once, 30 years ago, over something so stupid I can't even remember what it was. Didn't speak to her for 6 months. Then my wife got sick, needed surgery we couldn't afford. Rosa showed up at my door with a check. Said it was a loan, no interest, pay it back when we could. I tried to refuse. We weren't even speaking. She said, friendship doesn't end because of pride. Family doesn't end because of silence. Changed my whole perspective on what matters." He looked at Mateo directly. "You've got her heart. Keep it beating." As more guests departed, the group grew smaller, more intimate. Soon it was just Domingo, Pilar, Javier, Soledad, and a few others, the core group who'd been there from the beginning. Someone suggested music again, and Javier retrieved a guitar from his truck. The song started slow and reflective. old corridos that told stories of love and loss, of journeys and homecomings. People sang along softly, harmony building naturally in the way it does when people have sung together for generations. Luna disappeared into her room and returned with her notebook, the one she'd started writing in weeks ago. "I want to read something," she said quietly. The singing stopped. Everyone turned to listen. Luna opened to a page she'd marked. "I wrote this last week, thinking about everything that's happened. I want to share it now, while everyone's here." She took a breath and began. 3 months ago, I didn't know who I was or where I belonged. I was drifting, going through motions, existing but not really living. Then my dad brought me here, to this broken house, and I was angry. I thought he was dragging me down with him, making a bad situation worse. But what I've learned is that sometimes the thing that looks like falling is actually landing. This house caught us. All of you caught us. And in being caught, we learned how to stand again. My great-grandmother built more than adobe and wood. She built a pattern for how to live, with generosity, with determination, with faith that tomorrow can be better than today if we're willing to work for it. I'm grateful I got to learn that lesson. I'm grateful I got to be part of this restoration, not just of the house but of myself. Several people were crying now. Matteo felt his own eyes burn. His daughter, his quiet, practical daughter, had found her voice here, found her strength, found her place. Pilar stood and embraced Luna. "Your great-grandmother would be so proud," she whispered. As the evening wore later, Domingo suggested they take a photograph, everyone together, in front of the house, marking this moment. They gathered on the portal, adults in back, children in front, all of them tired and happy and full of good food and better company. Luna set up her phone on a makeshift tripod, timer running. She rushed to join the group just as the shutter clicked. The flash illuminated all their faces, young and old, family and friends, all of them part of the story now, all of them woven into the fabric of this place. After everyone finally left, after the last hugs and the last promises to return soon, Matteo and Luna stood alone in the quiet house. Dishes waited in the sink. Chairs needed straightening. The guest book lay open on the table, its pages filled with proof that people had been here, that this mattered, that the house lived again. "We should take our own photo," Luna said suddenly, "like the one of Abuela Rosa standing in front of the house. We should stand in the same spot, continue the tradition." They went outside into the night. Luna positioned them where that old photograph had been taken decades ago. She set the timer again, and they stood together, father and daughter, the house rising behind them in the darkness. The flash went off, capturing them, exhausted, paint-stained, maybe a little broken still, but standing, always standing. When Luna checked the image, she smiled. "Perfect," she said. "We'll add it to the wall tomorrow." Past and present, all connected, they went back inside, leaving the cleaning for morning. At the kitchen table, they opened the guest book one more time, reading the messages that had been left throughout the day. The final entry, written in shaky handwriting that must have been from one of the oldest guests, said simply, "A house is not saved by its walls, but by the love that fills it. This house overflows." Rosa would be joyful. Matteo closed the book gently. "She would be," he agreed. Luna looked around the room, at the refinished table, at the photographs on the walls, at the letters preserved in frames, at Abuela's blanket draped over the couch, at the wooden crosses hung above doorways, at every detail they'd worked so hard to restore and preserve and honor. "This isn't just her house anymore," Luna said. "It's ours too. Ours and the community's. It belongs to everyone who helps save it, everyone who believes in what it represents." "Legacy," Matteo said softly. "That's what we're building, not just for us, but for everyone who comes after." Outside, the desert night wrapped around them, infinite stars, distant coyote calls, the whisper of wind through sage. Inside, the house held them safe, its old bones strong again, its purpose restored. They had saved it. They had saved themselves. And now they would use what they'd built to help save others. The work wasn't finished. It would never really be finished. But they were ready for whatever came next. Together, they turned off the lights and headed to their rooms. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new work, new opportunities. But tonight, they could rest in the knowledge that they'd done what seemed impossible. They'd brought a house back to life. And in doing so, they'd brought themselves back to life too. 3 months later, the first snow of winter dusted the desert hills. Matteo stood on the portal in the early morning cold, coffee steaming in his hands, watching the pale sunlight transform the landscape into something magical. The house behind him hummed with warmth, actual warmth now, from the restored heating system they'd finally been able to afford. Inside, Luna sat at her desk working, a remote job providing steady income while she took online classes at the community college. Business management, she'd decided. She wanted to understand how to grow what they'd started, how to make it sustainable for the long term. Her morning routine had settled into something comfortable. Work until noon, then help at the workshop in the afternoons, evenings spent cooking or reading or documenting their ongoing journey in her journal. The workshop on the hillside was finished now, a solid structure with good light and proper ventilation. Inside, tools hung organized on walls, workbenches stood ready, and 3 days a week Felipe and 4 other teenagers from town came to learn. They were building furniture now, simple pieces at first, but the quality improved with each project. Matteo taught them not just skills, but philosophy: measure twice, cut once. Respect your materials. Take pride in work well done. Do things right, even when no one's watching. The business was growing slowly but steadily. Word spread about the quality of work, the fair prices, the way Matteo showed up when he said he would and finished what he started. People called from neighboring towns now, asking if he could take on projects. He had to turn some down. There were only so many hours in a day, but he kept a waiting list, kept his promises, kept building his reputation one job at a time. Domingo appeared on the road, walking slowly with his cane. This had become routine. Morning visits, coffee on the portal, quiet conversation about weather and town news and the small details of daily life. He climbed the steps carefully and accepted the cup of coffee Matteo offered. "Cold one this morning," Domingo observed. "First real cold of the season," Matteo agreed. They sat in companionable silence, watching the sun climb higher. Finally, Domingo said, "Pilar and I have been talking about Thanksgiving." "Yeah? We want to have it here. Big gathering, like the old days when Rosa was alive. She used to host every year, fed 30 or 40 people. We want to bring that back if you're willing." Matteo felt emotions swell in his chest. "We'd be honored." "Good," Domingo smiled. "Pilar's already planning the menu." "Fair warning, she's going to take over your kitchen for 3 days." "She can have it," Matteo laughed. Luna emerged from the house wrapped in a sweater, her own coffee in hand. "Morning, Domingo." "Morning, Mija. I was just telling your father about Thanksgiving plans." "I heard." Luna sat on the step below them. "I think it's perfect. The house needs that, needs to be full of people and food and life again." "There's something else," Domingo said, more serious now. "Soledad's son. You remember him, Jorge. He's having trouble. Lost his job in Albuquerque. About to lose his apartment. He's got 2 kids, nowhere to go." Matteo knew where this was going. "The house has room," he said simply. "Just temporarily," Domingo clarified. "Until he gets back on his feet." "Maybe a few months. However long he needs," Matteo said. "That's what this place is for. That's what it's always been for." Luna nodded agreement. "We'll help him however we can. Maybe he can work at the workshop, learn some skills while he figures things out." After Domingo left, Luna turned to her father. "Are you sure about this? Taking in Soledad's family?" "I'm sure," Matteo said. "This house saved us. Now it's our turn to let it save someone else." Later that week, Matteo made a trip he'd been putting off. The small cemetery on the edge of town held 3 generations of his family, including his grandmother. He brought flowers, the last blooms from the garden before frost killed everything back. At Abuela Rosa's grave, he knelt and placed the flowers carefully. The headstone was simple. Rosa Maria Herrera, 1932-2019, beloved mother, grandmother, friend. "We did it, Abuela," he said quietly. "We saved the house. It's alive again, full of people and purpose, just like when you were there. Luna, you'd love what she's become. strong and capable and kind. She's got your heart, your determination, and the workshop is teaching kids the way you taught me. We're passing it forward the way you always did." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I was so lost when I came back, broken in ways I didn't know how to fix. But the house, it caught me, just like you knew it would. All those journal entries, all those letters, all the love you built into those walls. It was still there, waiting. You gave me more than a house. You gave me a map for how to live. Thank you for that. Thank you for everything." He sat there for a while longer, feeling the cold ground beneath him, the weak winter sun on his back. He thought about his mother, buried not far away, and about Carmen, whose ashes they'd scattered in the mountains she loved. 3 generations of women who'd shaped his life in different ways, all of them present somehow in the house, in the work, in the way he was trying to live now. Before leaving, he took out his phone and looked at the photograph from the open house. All those faces, all those people gathered in front of the house his grandmother had built. He looked at the newer photo too, of him and Luna standing where Abuela Rosa had stood in that picture from the 1960s. The continuity was clear, past, present and future all connected. That evening, as Luna prepared dinner from one of Abuela's recipes, Mateo worked on plans for expanding the workshop. They'd need more space soon if they were going to take on more apprentices, maybe build additional structures on the hillside, create a proper campus for learning and working and building. "Dad," Luna called from the kitchen, "can you come here?" He found her standing at the stove, holding a wooden spoon, looking uncertain. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. She paused, gathering courage. "I need to tell you something." Mateo felt a flash of worry. "Okay. I've been talking to someone. A guy I met at the community college. He's in one of my online classes, but he lives 2 towns over. We've been seeing each other for a few weeks." She rushed on before he could respond. "It's new, and I don't know where it's going, but I wanted you to know. And I wanted you to know that even if it gets serious, I'm not leaving. This is my home now. Here, with you, with this house. Whatever happens in my life, this is my foundation." Mateo crossed the kitchen and pulled her into a hug. "Your mother would be so proud of the woman you've become. I'm proud of you. Even though I basically had a breakdown when we first got here, especially because of that," Mateo said. "You could have run, you could have given up, but you stayed and you fought and you built something beautiful. That takes real courage." Luna returned to her cooking and Mateo set the table that had been the center of so many gatherings, so many conversations, so many moments of connection. Tomorrow, Jorge and his family would arrive, and the house would fill again with the sound of children, with the energy of people working to rebuild their lives. This was what the house was meant for. This was what Abuela Rosa had built it to do. Not just to shelter bodies, but to shelter hearts. Not just to provide walls, but to provide hope. As they sat down to eat, snow began to fall outside, soft and gentle, blanketing the desert in white. Inside, the house glowed with warm light. Smoke rose from the chimney. The restored walls stood strong against the winter cold. Luna raised her glass of water. "To Abuela Rosa," she said, "for building something that lasts." "To Abuela Rosa," Mateo echoed, "and to all of us who keep it beating." They ate together at the table that had fed generations, in the house that had sheltered dreams and dried tears and witnessed both joy and sorrow. The house that had crumbled and been restored. The house that had caught them when they fell. The house that would catch others still to come. What they had created wasn't just a restored building, it was a living heartbeat, steady, strong, enduring. And it would go on beating long after they were gone, sheltering whoever needed shelter, offering hope to whoever had lost it, proving again and again that broken things can be made whole if someone cares enough to do the work. Outside, the snow continued falling. Inside, the fire burned warm. And in the space between, the house stood, witness to the past, shelter in the present, promise for the future, home.